Hello. Today we're going to talk about dividing polynomials using long division. So let's start with long division of just regular numbers. So just to review this process and familiarize ourselves with it again, we're going to go through this cycle of divide, multiply, subtract, and then bring down. Okay, so starting with the divide, we're just going to say how many times does 3 go into 7, just that first term. And we'll say it goes in twice, so that's our divide. Next we're going to multiply, so we're going to multiply the 2 times the 3, we get 6. And then we're going to subtract, so we're going to say 7 minus 6 gives us 1. And next we're going to bring down, so we're going to bring down that next number, which is a 2. And then we're going to start the cycle all over again. We're going to say how many times does 3 go into 12? It goes in 4 times. When we multiply, we get 12, subtract, and we'd get 0. So that our final answer, our final quotient would be 24. I bring that to your attention because we're going to use the same process with polynomials. So let's go through this one. So we're going to divide first. So we're going to go x squared divided by x. And just to remind you, x squared divided by x might look like this in algebra. So it's really saying x times x in the numerator and then just one x in the denominator. So x squared divided by x would just be x, okay? So I'm bringing that to your attention because that's going to be our very first term that we're going to come up with. So x squared divided by x would give us just x. So that was the divide. Next I'm going to multiply, so I'm going to distribute this x to the x plus 3. So x times x gives me x squared. X times 3 gives me 3x. Next, I'm going to subtract, and so I'm going to take this entire term and subtract it. So that means all these terms in here are their signs are going to change. So x squared minus x squared would be 0. 7x minus 3x would give us 4x. And then next I'm going to bring down. So I'm going to bring down that plus 12. And now I've gone through one cycle, I'm going to start the cycle over again. So I'm going to say 4x divided by x is going to give me 4. And now I'm going to multiply, so I'm going to distribute that 4 to my divisor. So 4 times x gives me 4x. 4 times 3 gives me positive 12. And next I'm going to subtract, and that's going to give me a remainder of 0. So my final answer, my quotient, is going to be x plus 4. Let's try another one together. Okay, I'm going to go through this same process here. So I'm going to divide first. So x squared divided by x gives me x. And then I'm going to multiply, so I'm going to distribute here. So x times x gives me x squared. X times 4 gives me 4x. Next I'm going to subtract. So I'm going to take this entire term right here and subtract it, which means all my signs are going to change. X squared minus x squared is 0. 9x minus 4x gives me 5x. And next I'm going to bring down. So I'm going to bring down that plus 20. And now I'm going to start the cycle over again. 5x divided by x gives me positive 5. And then I'm going to multiply. 5 times x gives me 5x. 5 times 4 gives me 20. Now I subtract, and I get 0 as a remainder. So my answer, my final quotient, is going to be x plus 5. Okay, why don't you try this next one on your own? So go ahead and pause the video, try it on your own, and then when you're finished, push play and compare our answers, see if you got it right. Okay, hopefully you were able to finish this problem with no issues. Let's do it together and see if we get the same thing. So first I'm going to divide my x squared by x. That gives me x. Next I'm going to multiply. So x times x gives me x squared. X times 3 gives me positive 3x. Then I'm going to subtract. Okay, so that means I'm going to change all my signs. X squared minus x squared is 0. And then negative 12x minus 3x gives me negative 15x. They're both negative, so I add them together. If a mistake's going to be made, it's probably going to be on one of these steps where you subtract. So be really careful of signs and such. Next I'm going to bring down, so I'm going to bring down that minus 45. And now I've gone through an entire cycle, I'm going to start the cycle over again. So I'm going to say negative 15x divided by x is going to give me negative 15. Then I'm going to multiply, that's going to give me negative 15x minus 45. Then I'm going to subtract, and that's going to leave me with 0. And so my final answer is going to be x minus 15. If you have any questions, work with a partner, rewind the video, and check your work until you feel satisfied that you could get this answer on your own. Okay, let's move on to another one. Go ahead and pause the video, try this one on your own. When you feel ready, go ahead and push play and let's see if we got the same thing. Okay, hopefully you got this one with no problems. Let's go through it to make sure. X squared divided by x gives me x. And then I multiply, I get x squared plus 2x. And then I subtract, I get 6x. And then I bring down that plus 12. And then I start my cycle over again. 6x divided by x gives me positive 6. Multiply and I get 6x plus 12. And then when I subtract, I get 0. So my final answer would be x plus 6. All right, let's move on to another example. Go ahead and pause the video, and we'll use this as one of our last examples to make sure we've got it. When you're ready, push play and we'll see if we got the same thing. How'd you do? Let's compare answers. So we're going to divide. X to the third divided by x gives me x squared. And then I'm going to distribute that x squared, so I get x to the third, because x squared times x is x to the third. And then x squared plus 5 gives me positive 5x squared. And now I'm going to subtract. Okay, so all my signs are going to change. And that leaves me with 4x squared. And now I'm going to bring down that 23x. And now I'm going to start the process over. 4x squared divided by x gives me 4x. And now I'm going to multiply. I get 4x squared plus 20x. And then I'm going to subtract. That leaves me with 3x. And then I'm going to bring down my 15 and start all over again. 3x divided by x gives me positive 3. And then I'm going to multiply. I get 3x plus 15. When I subtract, I get 0. So this is going to be my final answer. X squared plus 4x plus 3. How'd you do? If you have any questions, rewind the video, work with a partner, ask questions of your teacher. Let's see if we can figure this out. When you're ready, move on to the next slide. Okay, we'll use this one as our very last example to make sure we've got it. Go ahead and try this one. When you're ready, push play. Okay, this one was slightly trickier. Let's do it together to make sure we've got it. X to the third divided by x gives me x squared. Multiply that x squared, I get x to the third minus 4x squared. And then I'm going to subtract. So all my signs are going to change. That leaves me with negative 8x squared. And then I'm going to bring down that plus 47x. And now I'm going to start the process all over. Negative 8x divided by, negative 8x squared divided by x gives me negative 8x. And then I'm going to multiply, so I get negative 8x squared minus plus 32x. And now I'm going to subtract. So all my signs are going to change. That leaves me with 15x. And then I'm going to bring down that minus 60. Start the process over again. So 15x divided by x gives me 15. And when I multiply, I get 15x. And then 15 times negative 4 would give me negative 60. When I subtract, I would get 0, so this would be my final answer. X squared minus 8x plus 15. So you might be asking yourself, why are we learning this? Why are we going through this whole process? Well, it's all in an effort to solve polynomial equations. Last week we learned about solving polynomial equations by grouping and then factoring. But the downside to that is that not all polynomials can group. And also, it's labor intensive, meaning it takes a long time and we don't want to do all that work. So we're heading towards learning easier ways to solve these polynomial equations. If you remember, the last example that we looked at, our original equation was right here. If this was equal to 0 and we were trying to solve it, if we had one of the factors and divided it out, our quotient, our final answer was this. Once we have this, we know how to solve this. We could easily just factor it and then set each factor equal to 0. So I would look for two numbers that multiply to be 15, but whose sum is negative 8. So for example, I might say this would be like negative 5 times negative 3. Negative 5 times negative 3 is 15, but negative 5 plus negative 3 is negative 8. Once I had this, I could set each factor equal to 0 and I could solve that polynomial equation. So that's what we're heading towards, is just being able to do these equations in a way that's simpler and doesn't take up as much time. Okay, if you still feel shaky on some of these concepts, go ahead and rewind the video as much as you need to and review. You could ask your teacher for help. You could work together and ask each other for help. The practice exercises, there aren't very many of them today because each one takes a little bit of time, and this is a brand new concept, so we'll take it slow and make sure we've all got it. Hope you have a great day. If you have any questions at all, call me at my extension at any time.